Palestinian Media Watch was founded 14 years ago, and we study what the Palestinians are saying amongst themselves in Arabic. We always knew what they were saying in English to the media, what they were saying in English to negotiators. We wanted to know what they were saying in Arabic with a special focus on what they were saying to their children. Because we're convinced that what they say to their children is both their authentic beliefs and opinions, and what they say to their children will determine if we have peace in the next generation. For 15 years, we have been studying the Palestinian world by looking at things as broad as crossword puzzles, music videos, their school books, and of course, even things like sports, in order to get a sense of what's happening at the people level in the Palestinian Authority. Palestinian Media Watch finds that around the world, amongst members of parliaments around the world, right here in the United States, amongst members of Congress, there is so much misinformation and disinformation that people are listening to and hearing that there is a tremendous amount of sympathy for the Palestinian Authority. And like I say, it's based on false information. There is no reason why Christians here in the United States should not be victims of that as well. And that's what we're finding throughout the world. This lack of information is bringing sympathy toward the Palestinian cause. What our role is to let the world see, our role is to let the world see exactly what the Palestinian Authority is. They tell the world they're promoting peace. And when you listen to them, you see that the Palestinian Authority has named soccer tournaments after people like Abdul Basir Udeh, who blew himself up at the Passover Seder, killing 31 Israelis a number of years ago. This past year, they named a summer camp after Dalal Mughrabi. Dalal Mughrabi is a person who hijacked a bus. 37 civilians were killed. Why was the Palestinian Authority naming this summer camp after her? And this summer camp was sponsored by Salam Fayyad, the prime minister, who's supposed to be the moderate. So we find that there are different messages, completely different messages. To the outside world, they play the victim card, and people are naturally sympathetic with victims. But people must look at what's really going on there. This is not a situation of a Palestinian Authority promoting peace. They are victims. The people are victims, but they're victims of their own hateful leadership that has brought violence and destruction and hatred upon them. And those are the people who they should be angry at, their own Palestinian leaders, not at Israel, who's probably done more for them than any country in history. There is ongoing demonization by the Palestinian leadership of Israel and of Jews. And I'll just give you some examples. In the last few years, we have heard the following libels. One, Israel is spreading AIDS and drugs amongst Palestinians. And that was said by the head of the Palestinian Drug Authority. Two, Israel is spreading prostitution and drugs, and that was said by an advisor to the Prime Minister Salam Fayyad. Israel is planning to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque and is in very late stages of planning. The Mufti of the Palestinian Authority said that Israel is injecting acids into the ground under the Al-Aqsa Mosque in order to destroy it. Now, of course, that's a horrific libel when you're talking about a very religious population accusing Israel, but this is ongoing. These libels are ongoing. Israel is stealing body parts of Palestinians, and this was in the official newspaper. They even went so far as to say Israel buries Palestinians only 70 centimeters under the ground, so that when the families leave, Israel rushes and takes out the bodies and takes out the body parts and then transplants them in sick Israelis. Of course, that's ridiculous, yet this is the kind of hatred that they're promoting amongst their people. I'll give you another example. Since Yasser Arafat died, the Palestinian Authority has been saying that Israel poisoned him. Now, this is the person who created the Palestinian people really out of nothing. He is their hero. And they've been saying that Israel poisoned him. And we get this at every level, at the political level, at the media level. And then children repeat this on TV. In fact, one child was interviewed, and this has been broadcast 3 years in a row on the anniversary of his death. A child said on television, "I think the Jews poisoned him." And then he said, "Well, actually, I don't know how he died, but I know it was the Jews." So here this child, this Palestinian child, has heard so much hatred about Jews, so many libels and lies, that he is concluding that if something bad happened, if Yasser Arafat died, He doesn't even know how he died, but he is convinced it must have been the Jews. The United Nations is problematic in two ways with regard to Israel and the Palestinians. One, UNRWA, in its very essence, is an organization that's in charge of welfare for refugees. And it's a special organization for the Palestinians. It's different from the other UN organization, which deals with all other refugees. The other United Nations organization, its role has always been to solve the refugee problem by having them settle and resettled in wherever they happen to be and letting them get on with their lives. UNRWA has exactly the opposite role. UNRWA's role is to perpetuate the problem, to not let the people get out of the refugee camps, and to force the people to suffer for political purposes. Now, this isn't written into their official policy, but this is in practice what they've been doing. And so you have people in Lebanese refugee camps, for example, who according to Lebanese law have not been allowed since 1948 to actually have a profession or a business outside of the camps. They can't buy a home, even if they wanted to better their lives. And the UN goes along with this. So the UN is not UNRWA is not an organization to help the refugees. It's to perpetuate their suffering and then to perpetuate its own massive infrastructure, its hundreds of millions of dollar infrastructure, creating jobs, creating waste, and essentially perpetuating the people as victims who suffer so that they will then be angry at Israel and have hatred for Israel. So that's the first problem, is the UNRWA should not exist. It should be completely restructured as a resettlement organization. That's the first issue. The second thing is what UN money goes to beyond the refugees. And here we have, for example, over the years, we've had UN money actually sponsoring summer camps named after Palestinian terrorists who've killed a large number of Israelis. Now, this was done without the knowledge of the UN in New York, but it's being done by the UN workers because the overwhelming majority of UN workers in the Palestinian areas are Palestinians. And they really don't care what policy is in New York, and they do with the money. So they've sponsored summer camps named after terrorists. A few months ago, there was a soccer tournament named after Wafa Idris, the first woman suicide terrorist. And in the advertisement on the website, you had the name of the organization, Al-Amari, and inside their name, under their name, you had the letters UNRWA, as if they were a co-sponsor. UNRWA denied that they were co-sponsoring, denied that they were funding this anymore, but their logo was there and it remained there. So the UN in New York might not be aware, and they're probably not aware, and they're not intentionally, but there is no supervision as to what's really happening with the money, so that the money can even go for glorifying terrorists. This is not just a problem of the UN. This is a problem of the United States. It's a problem of the European Union. All the Western countries that are funding the Palestinian Authority are funding the Minister of Prisoners, who honors and glorifies terrorists regularly. They're paying salaries through the general budget of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails. Terrorists who've killed dozens of people are on salary of the Palestinian Authority, and that money is coming from the United States and the European countries. So there are a lot of organizations that are involved in this, I would say, horrific transfer of money to the Palestinian Authority, because it is that transfer of money without condition that enables the Palestinian Authority to continue promoting hatred, promoting violence, and essentially guaranteeing that we're not going to have peace in the next generation. The Palestinian summer camps are involved in a lot of what they call political education. Really, it's indoctrination. We saw summer camps on Palestinian TV for a couple of years in the late 1990s, and we publicized them. And what we saw were children running and jumping through fire hoops. We saw children being taught how to slit someone's throat. Literally, you saw young children running up to a boy with a plastic knife and literally slitting their throats. This was on Palestinian television in official Palestinian summer camps. They, of course, learned to see all of Israel, Jaffa, Haifa, Akko, all of Israeli cities as occupied, as part of Palestine, to be liberated. This was the ideological indoctrination of very young children. Hatred and violence and murder, the glorification of hatred, violence, and murder. Now, we publicized this, like I say, I think in 1999. It got a lot of exposure and a lot of condemnation. And the interesting thing is that since then, the Palestinian Authority has not broadcast from their summer camps. And this is very striking. It's a major, major event. It's completely reported in their newspapers. But apparently they've learned that the world won't accept that kind of hate promotion and indoctrination, so they're hiding it. And that's what happens regularly. We'll publicize something, and then the Palestinian Authority will try to hide it, can't decode it, and then we'll have to find hatred someplace else. It's like when someone is ill with a disease, and they're given with a bacteria, and they're given antibiotics, and then they build up some kind of immunity to that antibiotic. That's what's going on here. But I don't believe there's a different message. If there were a different message, then they would be showing that on Palestinian TV. Well, the first problem with the curriculum is that it explicitly denies Israel's right to exist. The Palestinian curriculum teaches Jews. I'll give you an example. In a 12th grade Palestinian school book, they teach the 1948 war ended when with the greatest catastrophe in history, when the Zionist gangs stole Palestine and created the State of Israel. So the Palestinians tell President Obama, and they tell the Europeans, we're upset with what happened in 1967, when Israel got Judea and Samaria, West Bank. They tell their own children that the Zionist gang stole Palestine in 1948 to create the State of Israel. In other words, the children are growing up. Israel has no right to exist. It's a theft. And this message then comes through poetry, singing about longing for Jaffa and longing for Haifa. And it's the environment of the entire Palestinian educational system. The maps print everything as if there is no Israel, as if it's a world without Israel. So the education jumps back and forth between presenting a world in which Israel doesn't exist and presenting a world in which Israel stole Palestine in 1948. Either way, the children are growing up feeling victimized from the moment they were born, and therefore hateful of the one who supposedly turned them into victims. So the hatred is right there from the first moment throughout the Palestinian education. In addition, there's the glorification of violence. They refer to terrorists right after the creation of the State of Israel. Of course, they don't call them terrorists. They call them heroic fighters who fought against Israel. The heroic fighters in the 1950s were all PLO terrorists. This hatred's not just toward Israel, by the way, in the education. For example, in the school books that were produced, the most recent ones for grade 12 a few years ago, they talked about what was going on in Iraq. American soldiers were there still, British soldiers were there still, and then they talked about the invasion, and then they talked about the heroic Iraqi resistance against this occupation by the United States and Britain. The heroic Iraq. This is a Palestinian Authority that gets hundreds of millions of American dollars every year, and they were teaching their children that terrorists who are killing, or people who are killing American soldiers who are heroic resistance against occupation. Why is it? They say that the dog doesn't bite the hand that feeds them, but you know what? In the Palestinian situation, they keep biting, and America keeps giving. The Palestinian Authority presents a face to the world as if they are the protectors of Muslims and Christians in the land. However, that is a false image. They very much are protecting and promoting everything Islamic, but they are destroying everything Christian. And just one of the great examples of this is just looking at the Christian population of Bethlehem. The Christian population thrived when Bethlehem was under Israeli rule, and in fact was about 65–70% of the population was Christian. Since the Palestinian Authority has taken over, since 1993, less than 20 years, The Christian population of Bethlehem today is around 10%. So here, one of the holiest cities to Christians, and there is really only a handful of Christians who have stayed there. Why? It has nothing to do with Israel. Under Israel, they thrived. This is because the Palestinian Authority has allowed them to be persecuted extensively. There were, we don't get this in the Palestinian press, they hide this, but there have been reports over the years of Christian girls being raped by Palestinian policemen, and the policemen being arrested just for a few days and then released. And many stories like this, also of businesses being persecuted and corruption. And like I said, the numbers speak for themselves. They've gone down to 10% population. So there is, this is a typical example of the deception that goes on with the Palestinian Authority. Oh, they speak to the world in such wonderful expressions about supporting Christians. But, and I've met Christian leaders in Bethlehem. They refused to, meeting we had a few years ago, people in Israel who were trying to help turn this around. First of all, they didn't want anyone to know that this meeting was happening. One of them had already been shot twice, and he was afraid for his life. But this is a very serious problem. Essentially, the Christian presence in the Palestinian areas is going down and eventually probably disappear. It should be noted that I think the only place in the Middle East where the Christian population has been thriving in many, many years is Israel. Because of course Christians that live in Israel have full rights and are protected and not because we have to, but we want to. We want them to have full rights, to feel comfortable in Israel. And they do. Israel gave over land to the Palestinian Authority in Gaza and destroyed the communities, thousands of people who've been living there for many, many years who built their homes. Israel didn't want to do this, but we did this in the hope that this would promote peace. Israel did something that even to our own people was immoral because we hoped it would bring peace. In exchange, the Gaza Strip was immediately turned into a fortress. Hamas won the elections. Eventually, the Hamas took over. Today, they have smuggled in thousands and thousands and thousands of missiles. We have no idea how many, really. We have no idea the range of these missiles. We don't even know what some of them might be, what kind of missiles they might be. They might be much more powerful to be used at some later date than what they're lobbing over today. So this is what we got when we gave land for peace. And I think Israel has learned, and hopefully our leadership has learned a great lesson from this. Until there is a Palestinian Authority leadership that teaches its people peace, so that we know they really want peace with Israel. They teach them acceptance. They teach them that Israel has been a wonderful neighbor for many, many years. If they would teach them to see Israel as a state with right to exist, who should live in peace by them, then we can begin to negotiate about some kind of land exchanges or land or giving more land to the Palestinian Authority and the creation of a state. Until that time, we have to see Gaza experience as a prototype. Were we to leave Judea and Samaria today, we would have Jerusalem surrounded on three sides by Palestinians. We would be, and just a few, we're talking about kilometers, we're talking about a couple of miles, we're talking about nothing. All of the center of Jerusalem could be in missile range within a couple of years. We're talking about the airport, a few miles away from those old borders. Those old ceasefire lines, we should never return to them. They are too dangerous. What we've learned from what's happening in the Arab world today, the so-called Arab Spring, is that no peace treaty is necessarily going to last. So therefore, we want to see peace education first, and then we can do some kind of border adjustments from where we are today that will guarantee that even should this land turn into a battlefield again, we would be secure. Those, I feel, are the conditions. That means that those old ceasefire lines that President Obama and others talk about, the 67s, those can never be returned to, because those will absolutely invite war and terror, and grave destruction upon Israel. There are a few 100,000 Israelis living in communities throughout Judea and Samaria. After the 1967 Six-Day War, when Judea and Samaria were occupied by Jordan prior to the war, Jordan used that land to try to destroy Israel. Israel got that land in that war. The United Nations in 242 gave Israel the right and even the obligation to develop that land. It said that Israel should not have to withdraw until there would be recognized and new borders. It didn't say the word new borders, but they said secure borders. They didn't say those old ceasefire lines. They said secure borders. Well, that hasn't happened yet, which means Israel has had the right and the obligation to develop that land for the benefit of Israelis and for the benefit of the local Arab population. And that's what Israel has done. The life of the local Arab population has increased tremendously. The way they're living, Israel, they had no universities when Israel got the land. Jordan didn't open up one university. Israel opened up 11 universities for them. Their life expectancy under Jordan was 43. Under Israel, it went up to 79. The economy in the early 70s of the West Bank Arabs was the fourth fastest growing in the world as Israel brought in infrastructure. When Israel got the Judea and Samaria, the local Arab population, 10% of them had running water in their houses, electricity and gas. Under Israel, it went up to 90%. So Israel has benefited the local. Israel felt these are our neighbors, we're going to help them. But there was no reason, moral or ethical, that Jews could not live in Judea and Samaria. This has been part of Jewish history. Jews had lived there until the Jordanian occupation in 1949. People forget this. Under the British mandate, Jews were allowed, and there were many Jews who were living there. Thousands of Jews who were living there who were expelled by Jordan. So Jordan's 19-year occupation didn't give anyone the right to prohibit Jews from living there, and the UN clearly made that statement. Israel would not have to withdraw to those old borders. Now, one of those cities was named Itamar, which is my name, and the Fogel family lived there. Just about a year ago, terrorists from the Awad family, from a town called Awarta, right nearby, went in there. They went with knives. They went into this home. They found 3 children sleeping there, stabbed them, slit their throats. They then killed the parents who put up a certain fight when they saw them. These people today were finally arrested. They're in Israeli jails, and it turned out not just the 2, the whole family was involved. About 6 or 7 of the Awad family members ended up in jail. Now, just a few weeks ago, Palestinian television invited the mother of Hakim Awad, the one who did the murders himself. She spoke on TV. She talked about him and actually was proud. My son, the one who did the Itamar attack, and he's sitting 5 life sentences in prison. She was proud to say this on television. And she talked about him. He's the apple of my eye. And then her sister spoke and talked about him, about Hakim Awad, the killer. He is a hero and a legend. And the Palestinian television moderator then said, well, we also send our best wishes or regards to the prisoners. So what we're seeing is that these people come, they kill civilians, these Palestinian terrorists, and then they are turned into legend and heroes in the Palestinian Authority. This is the great tragedy of the Palestinian Authority today. They tell the world they're fighting for peace, and they tell their people that Jews should be killed. You have a right to kill Jews, and if you do, you are a Palestinian hero. We'll name a sporting event after you. We'll name a summer camp after you. We'll name a street after you. And this is a fantastic motivation for future terrorists. One of the things that upsets me terribly is when I hear people discussing the Iranian plans to build nuclear weapons as if it's Israel's problem. People who think an Iranian bomb is Israel's problem have no understanding of what Iran represents. Iran represents a shared ideology. that sees itself eventually having Islam subjugate the entire world under Islam. This has been said explicitly so many times by Shiite leaders. It's in the writings of the Ayatollah Khomeini, who established the modern current Iran. He wrote that if a Muslim government has enough strength so that they can be assured of victory, then offensive jihad becomes permissible to go out and conquer the world. If they can be assured of victory, Iran with Ahmadinejad believes that if they get one nuclear weapon, which will then enable them to build a whole slew, they absolutely will. And then those nuclear weapons are going to be smuggled into cities of Europe, and they will be smuggled into cities across the United States. And then I fear the entire world will be facing nuclear blackmail. They might even detonate one just as a warning and say, okay, now this is what we want of you. That is not a possibility. That is inevitable if you listen to what they say and understand what they are building there. This is not Israel's problem. This is humanity's problem. This is the free world's problem. It's every Christian's problem. And we all must eliminate this threat before it becomes a reality. One of the things that makes Israelis very, very, I would say, happy is that we know that the American people feel close to Israel, and Israelis feel close to the American people. And that's something, and we know that the population, the people of the United States do support Israel and really want their leadership to support Israel. When it comes to Iran, I feel Congress likewise is very much behind Israel. And I mean both Republicans and Democrats. And there's the history of Congress and the United States supporting Israel has been bipartisan. The administration today is giving very funny messages. I'm hoping that some of those messages are just so that the Iranians won't know what America's planning. I hope very, very much that the United States understands that Iran is a threat to the free world, Iran with an atomic bomb. And I hope that this administration will not just support Israel after the fact, but will plan together with Israel how to assure, and not just with Israel, with the European countries, will all plan together to make sure that Iran never gets. And again, I just hope that all of the statements of hesitation, of supposed hesitation coming from the United States are actually part of a deception so that the other side won't understand what is coming at them. If not, I think it's very unfortunate because we need strong international leadership by the United States in dealing with a threat to all of humanity. There's turmoil throughout the Arab world today, a number of successful revolutions. The world media and leadership is referring to it as an Arab Spring. If you look at it carefully, it's really an Islamic Spring. Take Egypt, for example. Egypt is a country that was ruled ruthlessly by a dictator for many, many years. Once they were given democracy, they immediately voted and put in the Muslim Brotherhood together with the Salafists, over 60–70% of the supporters wanting an ideology which is, the West considers it a radical Islamic ideology. The Muslim Brotherhood of Egypt has written in the past that their goal is subjugation of the world under Islam, period. It is explicit. You are the nation that Allah has chosen. You are the people. This is Muslim Brotherhood ideology. Now, today they are not rushing out to fight the world. That does not mean that the ideology and the belief and the planning isn't there. There's an important book that can be found on our website that we translated. It's called Jihad is the Way. It's on the homepage of our website, palwatch.org. It's a book written by the former head of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, and he explains explicitly their plan. The plan is to subjugate humanity under Islam. The way to do it is through jihad. The goal is through slow and careful preparation. Don't rush to the jihad until we're ready, but this is the plan. He said, if you rush ahead too quickly, you are causing more damage. So this is their ideology. We must listen to what they say and believe what they say. Now, we have Muslim Brotherhood there. We've had, in the last number of years, we saw for the first time even in Turkey, not by revolution, but by democracy, has elected an Islamist party, an Islamic party. And we've had this, of course, in Libya, we will see it. In Tunisia, we're seeing this. All through the Arab world, we're seeing an overwhelming majority of people voting these parties. And we must recognize what that means. This is not just Israel's problem. We're talking about having a massive part of the globe eventually being run by countries whose goal is to unite together against freedom and Christianity and all the values that we hold dear, and against the Jewish state, of course, as well. So it's not an Arab Spring, it's an Islamic Spring. Let's call a spade and understand what their end game is.